Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Nupur Mungekar and we are back here again on our channel, and today we are going to speak about home exercise program in Parkinson's disease. And to speak to us about that, we have our very own Dr. Asmita Sangave who's going to speak to us. So why did we come up with this topic? Since a lot of our patients who cannot come to our clinic and even therapists are not able to go at their residences, we thought why not put up a small exercise program that they can do it at the leisure of their house by themselves. So, Asmita, without a further ado, can you please take over?
Yes, sure, Nupur. Thank you so much. Yes, as you correctly said, that home exercise program is very important, not only now in the lockdown period, but also in generally also we emphasize on home exercise program, because whatever therapy we do with these patients, home exercise program is important to keep it in touch. That there should be maintenance of the treatment that we are giving. Okay. So without further ado, let's just start. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Okay. Okay, can we see the screen? And is the audio clear?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, sure. Then let's start. So we have started with neurological conditions today, and as we discussed, we are going to do Parkinson's disease because we thought it's better to do disorder wise. So first, let us understand what is Parkinson's disease, okay? Because many of the patients come to me and they're like, what exactly is Parkinson's disease? So the explanation I'm going to give now is very basic so that all our patients understand. So we have many neurons, or you can say many cells in our brain, which release a chemical called dopamine. Now this dopamine is responsible for all the coordination, function, motor control in our body. So because of various reasons which are unknown for us, these cells, these neurons start decreasing in our brain, and hence the dopamine also decreases. That's the basic physiology of Parkinson's. Now, because dopamine is less, the coordination of the movement, the functions, etc., also disrupts. So, why does Parkinson's happen? I mean, what are the possible causes? Initially, it was said that it is only above the age of 60 or 65 years, and it is mostly seen in geriatric age group. But nowadays, we can see Parkinson's as young as 17 and 24. So nowadays, we have young onset of Parkinson's disease also. There are many possible causes that are there in research, like genetic. Many family members have Parkinson's. They are more prone to Parkinson's. Potential environmental risk factors, and so many other theories. But all these theories are just into research and nothing has to be proven, and hence we really don't know the exact cause of Parkinson's disease. Okay, let's just quickly go through what are the stages of Parkinson's disease. So there are many there are many different formats which describe the stages. There are different formats which tell you different stages, but I'm just going to take those 5 stages basically. So the first stage basically starts with unilateral. So only one side of the body starts showing symptoms, and there is very mild symptoms in the body. The second stage is now both the sides of the body start showing your symptom. There are the movement problems start, the slowness of activity, a little bit of rigidity, the posture changes, walking is a little affected, but still you can do everything independently by yourself. Now, stage 3, the movements are much slower, the rigidity is much more, there is difficulty in daily activities like dressing and bathing, etc. You might need a little help, but still it's mild help and you are still managing all the activities. Stage 4 is somewhere you will need help, whether it's an assistive aid or a person. You need help in all the other activities. You're not able to live independently. There are significant mobility issues. The rigidity is much more. The slowness of activity is much more. And stage 5 is something where you're bedridden or wheelchair ridden, where you definitely need severe help. And there are other psychological changes also, like mental changes, delusions, and hallucinations. So very brief about all the stages. Now, saying that, I would also like to mention that, Nupur, for example, if you and me both have Parkinson's disease and we both are in stage 1, but still our symptoms will be different. It will all depend from patient to patient, person to person. So that's why this picture denotes that even if you're on stage 1 or stage 4 or stage 5, the symptoms might differ from person to person. Okay. Now let's go and talk about some symptoms. So we divide the symptoms in two major aspects. One is the motor symptoms and one is the non-motor symptoms. So motor symptoms may first you have is tremor. So we usually call tremor in Parkinson's disease as pill rolling tremor. So, it's basically like how you roll a pill. So that's why this tremor is like this. And the tremor is resting tremor. That means the tremor is there in your resting position. So that is one of the major symptoms. Again, not all patients will have tremor, but majority everyone will have. It depends again from case to case. Slowness of movements, which is what in our terms call it as bradykinesia. You start seeing that while getting up or walking or doing functional activities, you observe that the movements have become slow. So that is there. Then stiffness or rigidity. All your muscles start becoming stiff and rigid. Your posture starts becoming stooped posture because all these muscles out here are becoming rigid. You will observe that your elbow is into slight bending position. Your knees are into bending position because all these muscles are getting stiff. And then loss of balance, because a lot of coordination issues is there, weak posture, weak core muscles, etc. And hence there is a loss of balance also. Now, what are the non-motor symptoms? There is loss of sense of smell, sleep problems, constipation, depression, and many more. Now, these are the major symptoms, but along with this, the medicines of Parkinson's also have a lot of side effects. So, daytime sleepiness, hallucination, drop in blood pressure, or psychosis, these are few symptoms which are related to the side effects of the medicine. So just to give in a brief idea of what you can see in a patient with Parkinson's disease. Okay. Now, if you feel all these symptoms, so majority, what happens, people are really not aware about Parkinson's disease. Nowadays, yes, because nowadays there are a lot of awareness sessions going on and all that. But in an older age per se, you see tremors, you see stoop posture, you see slowness of movements, all these are there in older age also. So initially people used to always say, oh, these are the symptoms of old age, but it not maybe, maybe it's Parkinson's. So you really need to go and check it with your doctor. So the first thing you need to do is go to a neurologist. In that also, I would say specifically a movement disorder specialist, because that person will be able to guide you through the management. Medicines are very important. So that is why you have to keep visiting your doctor in every 3 to 6 months. Keep telling your doctor the changes in your symptoms, the side effects of the medicines, and have your medications adjusted regularly. There is a certain time that these medications have to be taken. There is a routine that has to be followed, and everything can be taken care of if you go to a doctor, and the doctor will advise you very correctly. Besides that, we all know, we have spoken about this, the multidisciplinary approach is something we should include in every disorder, like every single aspect of neurological disorder specifically. Regular exercises, will come to physical therapy in detail, of course, but occupational therapy, speech therapy, because there's a lot of slurs speech, difficulties in swallowing, counseling and medication for depression, because psychological aspect is also a major part in Parkinson's disease. So we really need counseling, and if need be, also medications. The adjunct therapies, there are so many researchers out there for dance movement therapy. It is one of the best therapies for Parkinson's disease. That is Tai Chi. Tai Chi is also really useful and helpful because it has very slow and controlled movements. It's a form of Chinese martial arts. Then there is massage, acupuncture, and nutrition. As we discussed that patients with Parkinson's have difficulties with constipation. So the dietitian comes into picture here. She will definitely give you a good diet so that you have all the aspects covered. And of course, there is physical therapy, which we will go in detail now.
Asmita, do you think counseling needs to be done even to the patient caregiver or patient relatives who are staying with them?
Yes, of course. Yes, for sure. That's a very good point, Nupur, because not only patients, but I think caregivers suffer a lot more than the patients because they have to take care of themselves as well as the patients. And not only specifically in Parkinson's, but any other disorder where the patient has to take care of them like for continuous hours or like the entire day or something. They have issues. So both mentally and physically, they should get the counseling done. Okay, so why is exercise important for people with Parkinson's? So one thing I would like to mention here is because we don't know the possible cause of Parkinson's, we are not yet at that stage where we can treat Parkinson's completely. We cannot treat Parkinson's, and hence, even if we cannot alter the progression or we cannot come back to what we were, we can definitely try and maintain our stage. Like if I am at stage 1 and my age is say 60 years, I am a 60-year-old lady and I have stage 1 Parkinson's, that doesn't mean my life ends, right? I will try to maintain myself, my physical ability, my mental ability in stage 1 for as long as I can, and try to make my life better. So my quality of life should be better. So that's the aim of any therapy, whether it is medication as well as other adjunct therapies. So physical and mental well-being, yes. So even if we can't alter the progression, but it is essential for the quality of life. Okay. And there are many researchers which indicate that people with Parkinson's who have been exercising definitely benefit more than people with Parkinson's who are not exercising. And obviously exercises has its own benefits, as we all know that inactivity causes a lot of negative effects and we are preventing that. So that's why exercise is very important in Parkinson's disease. Just to summarize, because we're going to start the treatment part later, that this is how a typical posture of a Parkinson's patient is. There is steep posture, there is stoop posture, masked face, there is rigidity in all the muscles. That's why you see all these muscles are into contracted position. As I said, elbows are flexed, wrists are flexed, knees are bent. There is reduced arm swing while you're walking. There is tremors. So, and there is shuffling gait. We'll come to this later again. But this is how basically a Parkinson's patient, when you see a Parkinson's patient, these are the major symptoms that you can see in them. So let's go to the first thing, posture. I always think posture is very important because if posture is good, your core will be good. If core is good, your balance will be good. And if balance is good, the gait, the walking part will be good. So posture is something that you really, really have to, emphasize. So, I have mentioned some correct and incorrect postures here. So if you see this line here, so this is a wall. So what I would suggest all these patients is when you're walking around in the house and you come across a wall, stop there for a moment, take a moment, stand against the wall and try to lean back completely. Your back should be completely supported against the wall. See, the shoulder blades that we have should be against the wall and the back should be against the wall. Now, once you feel that posture is correct, once you understand the posture, then start walking again. So this should be a habit. Whenever you're walking, if possible, there is a wall, try to go against the wall, try to keep your posture straight, chest out, shoulders back, all that, and then again start walking. Similarly, for sitting position, if you see this is an incorrect posture, where if you see the back of the person is humped, okay, there is a hump in the back, which is not correct. Okay, so good posture, shoulder blades and back of the person should be completely rested against the back of the chair. Hip, this is the hip region, this is the knee region. So hip and knee both have to be at 90 degree angle, and the feet of the person should be on the floor, it should be touched. Also, if you see the neck posture here, the neck has to be straight. It cannot be protruding forward. You cannot be sitting like this. You have to be straight. Okay. Now, sleeping posture. So when you're sleeping on your stomach, so that time if you see your shoulders have to be parallel to the bed. It cannot be touching the bed. Why? Because when you touch the shoulder to the bed or you rest the arm to the bed, you see a hump again in your back. It's a wrong posture. If you see hip also, there is a raise in the hip. while the hip should be into neutral position in the correct posture. Again, observe the back. There is a curve in the back when you sleep like this. This curve should not be exaggerated. It should be in the normal limits. And the neck. So the neck has to be rested very well. It cannot be into a strained position. Similarly, for sleeping on your back, again, your arm should be rested here, because if your shoulders are above the level of your body, then again there is a hump in the shoulder, in the back. And if you see the neck is completely into extended position. It goes completely back, which again will strain your back. So these are some pointers that you should keep in mind while you're sleeping on your stomach or on your back. So we saw the standing posture, the sitting posture, and the sleeping posture. Now, what do we do for these postures? Like, some stretching exercises that we can do. So this is a person sitting on the chair. Again, remember all the steps for good posture: hip and knee 90-90, etc. You first bend completely down so that you're touching the toes, so that your back is completely strained, so that your muscles is into the elongated position. And then you slowly come to the moderate stage, the middle stage, and then completely straight into the idle posture. Okay. Say similarly with the neck, you cannot be protruding. So you have to so this is your chin, just tuck your chin. So always keep a hand on your chin, and when you're protruding, just try to tuck it and keep it into this position. These are very small tips that we can use in day-to-day basis. Some stretching exercises. First, I would like to explain what stretching is, because there are many people who don't understand what stretching pain is and what normal pain is. So everyone can just, keep your hand and elbow straight, and you have to just over pressure your wrist. So the feeling that you get here is the stretch pain. So that is what you should feel in any stretching exercise. If you feel anything different than this, that means there is a discomfort, there is a pain. You should immediately tell your therapist, and the therapist will definitely try and change the movement for you. So these are some trunk stretching exercises where you're stretching the sides. So again, sitting on a chair. If the person can stand, definitely these exercises can be done in standing position with supervision. So you just have to bend your spine in the opposite direction so that you get a good stretch both the ways. Okay, if you see here, the person is holding the chair and then stretching. This is incorrect, because then it won't be able to get a good stretch here. Similarly, for the rotations, you just have to rotate your body from both the sides. You can take the help of the chair. Again, you can do this in standing position as well. For your calf muscles, if a person is able to stand securely, he can be against the wall, facing the wall, and you can keep his wrist on the wall at 90 degrees, elbow bent. The right leg will be forward and bent, and the left leg will be straight and backwards. So when you're stretching, what you have to do is you're in this position, just lean forward. Just lean forward in this position, and you will get a good stretch in your calf muscles in the leg, which is behind, not the front one, the behind one. And if the patient is not able to stand, then what you can do it in the sitting position as well. So you have to sit, you have to scoot forward in the chair. So you come to the edge of the chair. Be careful. You don't have to come like to the edge completely, a little bit, so that you have a range that you can bend your knee a little bit more and try to take this ankle behind in this position. So again, you will feel the stretch in whichever leg you're taking behind. Okay, for your upper trunk or shoulder muscles, you take a wall or a corner of the wall or the door where you can stand like this with your shoulder and elbow 90-90 and turn to the opposite direction of whichever hand is on the wall. So if my right hand is on the wall, I'm turning to the opposite direction. You will get a good stretch in this area. Okay. Similarly, for your shoulder muscles and your upper trunk, what you can do is again lean against the wall in this position, and you have to try to touch your chest to the wall and take your hand, slide your hand upward towards the wall and try to take it as up as you can and try to move forward so you feel a good stretch. Shoulder blades, so we've discussed this before also, that these are your shoulder blades. Okay, these are your shoulder blades. So you have to imagine that there is a coin kept between the shoulder blades and you have to hold the coin with your shoulder blades. So basically you have to just take your shoulder back. Okay, just take your shoulder back. So keep your neck in check, your chest should come out and your shoulder blade should go back. Squeeze it so you feel a good stretch. Now, some safety tips while you're doing these stretching activities is stretching activities should be done slowly. There should be no jerky or bouncy movements, because then you're not doing it correctly. You have to hold the stretch position as long as possible. Ideally, I would say you should hold the position for 30 seconds, because that is the physiology that the muscle takes 30 seconds at least to get stretched. So 30 seconds should be there, and if you can hold it for a little more time, yes, why not? But again, no discomfort, no pain. You should avoid any discomfort. If anything is there, tell your therapist. And breathe naturally. Whenever you're doing these exercises, don't hold your breath. Keep breathing. Tell yourself, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Now, these stretching exercises, all the exercises have to be done with a 30 seconds hold at least 5 times once a day. This is a basic, basic idea. But if the patient, if the exercise is too easy or too difficult, we can change according to their needs. Now let's go for strengthening exercises. Now, we might not have weights and TheraBands and all that available in our houses as we have in our clinics, but we can definitely use any kind of can or bottles, or simpler water bottle of 1 liter, half a liter, fill it completely with water. That can act as weight. So it's that easy. I would suggest that we always start with half a liter and gradually increase to 1 liter according to our strength. Okay. So we do shoulder strengthening here, shoulder activities, raising the hand sideways, raising the hand from the front range. Then we do elbow for biceps and triceps. This is just elbow basic flexion. Then for triceps, okay. So all these exercises. This is a seating crunch position. So you are just sitting in a correct posture, and then you lean forward. You keep your hands straight and you lean forward so that you get a good strengthening of your core muscles here. So this is a sitting crunch position, and this is for your leg, knee muscles. Okay. So in this position, you're just basically kicking the knee from this position to this position. Here you can add weights if you want. If you have ankle weights in your houses, then please use that. If you don't, then you can use some sandbags, or you can create weight, basically put some rice of 1 kg or something and just create a bag and tie it around your ankle and do the same. Okay. Okay, now for leg strengthening, for your hip muscles, okay, for your hip muscles. So we take a safe environment, very important, because these are home exercise programs. There might not be people for supervision. So you take a safe environment. You should be around walls. There should be a wall behind you. There should be a wall at the side, and there should be a chair in front of you. Very basic, just do forward kicking. This is side kicking. Do side kicking, do forward kicking, back kicking. These are for your side hip muscles, forward hip muscles, and back hip muscles. Okay. So here again, you start without the weights, but if without the weights is very easy for you, we can put half a kg weight and then we can do the similar exercise. Now here, what I would say is that first, initially always do with holding the chair, both the hands. But if you feel, okay, this is very comfortable, I can manage, then, you can leave one hand and you can take one hand support. And if that is also very easy, and if your therapist is allowing you, then you can wean off both the hands, again with a safe environment. Similarly, for the ankles, we did shoulder, elbows, hip, knees. Now ankles, just very basic, go on toes and go on your heels. So this is on toes. We can take both the toes, both the legs up together. And on heels is a little difficult. So if you're not able to do both the heels together, but so you can do unilaterally, one heel at a time. And if you're in good condition, stage 1, if you can walk properly and if your therapist is allowing you to do, then you can walk on toes and walk on heels instead of doing this exercise, which is a progression to this. Okay, for strengthening, also very basic, you should do all the activities 10 times on each side and slowly progress to 15 and 20, and always keep your therapist in loop. The therapist will tell you how to progress. Okay. Anything you want to add, Nupur?
No, it looks fair enough because they are supposed to do it at home. So we have to be a little
Sure.
wise in designing something
Correct.
that will not cause harm than, you know, the good. But so whatever you have given, it's perfect. Like they can do it by themselves. Good.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to mention it here very clearly that this is not the therapy program for Parkinson's disease. This is a home exercise program. So when a patient comes to us as a physiotherapist, we have a lot of other therapies that we do it along with the patient, which is much more beneficial. This is just to maintain whatever we are doing or in times like this. So, you know, if a patient sees this video and just blindly follows these exercises and thinks that it is going to help them, yes, it is going to help them to a certain extent. But if you take good advice from your therapist, from your doctors, it's going to help you much more than that. Okay. So let's go to transitions, because I think transitions is very important in a patient, especially with Parkinson's patient. They complain that, you know, it is easy. It's very difficult to get up. It's very difficult to get up from the bed. It's very difficult to get up from the sitting position, etc. So I've just pictured here. 1 minute, let me just take this down. Okay. So this is a patient sitting in our normal posture. It's very difficult for them to stand from a position where they are completely back of the chair. So it's always advisable to scoot at the edge of the chair. So how do you scoot? So there is a technique for scooting also, that you scoot one at a time, one leg at a time. So this hip area, if you see, you scoot from this side to this side. So first, you take the right side ahead, right hip ahead, then you take the left hip ahead. So slowly scoot ahead depending on your chair length and your body. You'll take 1 or 2 scoots to come to the edge of the chair. Again, please be careful. Don't come to the extreme edge. Okay. Once you come to the edge of the chair, you take your arm support, use your entire arm strength, lean a little forward, and then push from your arms and from your knee muscles and stand. Now, when you stand, the posture has to be straight. Maintain this posture for a few seconds and then come back to your sitting position. So initially, you will take the arm support and you will do it, but later on, the aim is to cross your hands against your chest and do the similar exercise, so that here you're actually using your knee muscles, you're not using your hands, which is what we want. While sitting is also very important. While sitting, I always tell my patients, always imagine there is an egg kept on the chair. Okay, so you cannot squash the egg. You have to keep the egg as it is. So when you're sitting down, always you have to see, if you see here from standing to sitting posture, you always have to push your hips out first. Push your hips out and then slowly sit down. So slowly that you're just touching the egg and then coming up. So if you have seen many elderly people or many people, if you see, they just like slop on the chair. They just fall down on the chair when they're sitting. You know, dhadak se they will sit down. Many people will be like, ye ekdam se dhadak se gir jate hai, baith jate hai. So basically that is because your knee muscles are weak. So we are controlling those knee muscles. So that's why this technique helps them to imagine, okay, there is an egg down there. I don't have to squash. I have to slowly sit in a controlled manner. For bed mobility, these are few bed mobility exercises. So the patient is lying on their back, and hip and knee both are into bend position. You just have to rotate your lower body. You don't have to rotate your upper body, just the lower body to right and left side. And this is a bridging exercise, which is very good for your core muscles. So if you see, you're forming a bridge with your body and hence bridging. So again, lying on the back with hip and knee bent, and you just have to lift your buttocks up, hold this position for few counts, and then leave it. So maybe you're holding it for 10 or 15 counts and do it like for 5 times. Now getting up from the bed. Okay, now how do we get up from the bed? So this is the position. You're lying on the back, hip and knee is bent. So the first thing you do is you just rotate. How do you rotate? In this position. You just rotate your lower body. Your upper body is the third step. So the first step is this. Second step is rotating your lower body. Then you rotate your upper body, and then you come into a side lying position. After this, you just take your legs down. Your legs have to come down from the bed and slowly start coming up with pushing using your arm strength and your core. So you just push up and then sit straight. So if you do it stepwise, if you do this, if you follow this, it's definitely going to be easy with practice. Marching. Marching is a good strengthening as well as aerobic exercise. It's very basic, just left, right, left. Start with sitting posture if you're not able to do in standing, and if you're able to do it in standing, hold it with a chair for safety. And if you're confident about that also, you can do it without chair also. Just do spot marching for a minute or two, which will help you. Okay. Now aerobic training. Everyone knows this is, sorry.
The marching part will help up with their cardio, right?
Yes, both strengthening as well as cardio. Yeah, right. So, and also these, if you see these exercises, these are also helpful for your balance also, because all these exercises you're doing on one leg. You know, when we walk, we don't realize, but 70% of our gait cycle we walk on one leg, and 30% of the gait cycle, a walking cycle, both the legs are on the floor. So majorly we are walking with one leg. So one leg balance is very important. And so if you see all these exercises here, they are, you know, you're shifting your weight on one leg and doing. So these will also help for your balance. I'm not giving more of balance exercises here and home exercise because it's a very tricky part. So only those will help, and we are also training the core and posture, but more of balance will be done in therapy sessions. Aerobic training is very basic. You do walking, you do staircase climbing, you do cycling, you do swimming, aqua therapy, aqua zumba, any kind of water exercises. It all depends from patient to patient what the status, functional status of the patient is. If he's able to do staircase, please go ahead and do. If he's able to do cycling, there are many researches out there which says that cycling helps Parkinson's disease. But again, the therapist has to assess the patient. Excuse me, therapist has to assess the patient and see if the patient can do these exercises. But the safest exercise I feel is walking. So I think everyone should do walking with or without the assistive device is completely okay.
I think right now in this situation, what they can do is walk in the passage or something like that. What do you say?
Yes, walk in their passage. If they have stairs in and around, just go up and down with a bar. Without a bar, I wouldn't suggest. With a bar and assistive device, okay? Now, this is another symptom that many patients complain of, which is freezing gait. So for people who don't know freezing gait, I'll just quickly explain. So what happens when you're walking? When you're walking, one of the legs, one of your foot freezes, literally freezes. And what happens? You're not able to lift the foot. And that's why you bend forward, you lean forward, your balance of your body is lost and you fall forward. So that's how the major falls in Parkinson's happen. So what do you do to prevent these freezing gait? So if you have a caregiver or a therapist, usually what they do is, these are feet of your Parkinson's patient. We keep a foot in front of the patient's foot. And now we tell the patient to step over my foot. So a caregiver can also keep a foot like this. So this is your therapist's foot. So the patient has to step over the foot. So this will give them a visual cue, because cues are very important in Parkinson's, whether it is visual, auditory, tactile, anything. So this will give them a cue, and it will give the signal to the brain, okay, I have to step over. So then they try to lift the leg and move ahead. In walking also, it's very important to tell them, to teach them to tell themselves that I have to walk big steps, big steps, big steps. So that helps them and cue wise, visually also, if you have these markers, so what you can do is you can place these markers in your house. I would suggest the marker should be of some bright color like red or something, so it's visually very strong. And you can mark it like suppose from the bedroom to the wash area, the bath area, or from the bedroom to the hall, where the patient usually has to walk around in the house and it gets difficult. So put these markers, and the patient has to keep their foot according to the markers. So big steps with cues is very important here. Now, if you don't have a caregiver, you don't have a therapist to keep a foot, so what can we do? Nowadays, technology is such great boon to us. We have laser sticks. We have these laser sticks available in the market where we have to just press a button and then it will give a laser beam. So we have to just step over the laser beam. Similarly, we have these laser shoes also, which give you this laser lines in front of you and you have to basically step over it. It's just a form of visual cue. Now there is another big thing in Parkinson's is masked face. People say that, my expressions have lost because of the rigidity of the muscles on the face and all that. So there are many facial exercises that you can do. I'm just going to demonstrate it very quickly. First is eyebrows. So just raise your eyebrows down. Raise your eyebrows. So just raising is not important. Stretch it and down. Stretch it and down. Eyes, close your eyes tightly, open it. Tightly open it. Okay, with the nose also, just flare your nose. Okay, for cheeks, you can also give resistance with the cheeks. So when you blow the cheeks, you try to push it and maintain it. Okay, so chin movements, lip movements. Smile, no wide smile so that you can see it. No whistling. All the mouth movements, and then tongue movements in each directions. Okay, these are very basic exercises that we can do. And also another thing I've seen and many research papers have also mentioned is about drinking with straws. But some thick fluids, excuse me, like milkshakes or something, where you need to suck the milkshake. So it's like an exercise for your facial muscles. Some fine motor exercises that we can do at home is we can get a clay and we can make different objects out of the clay. We can play with the clay in different movements. Then we can have these cloth pins. So if you see these cloth pins, they are arranged to a chart paper or a ruler. So just open it and again pinch it, open it, pinch it, open it, pinch it. Good for your grips. Lock in quick key movements, good for your wrist movements, good for your elbow movements, good for your fine motor. Then have some beads of different colors and try to separate it. Even if you don't have beads in the house, take your grains, but take grains of different shapes and sizes like rice, chole, moong, etc. Take it in a bowl and try to separate it differently. These are some fine motor activities that you can easily do. Tying a knot, releasing a knot, anything. Now, this is just a picture where these are the assistive devices that a patient can use. As we all know, we have patients with Parkinson's have tremors, and it's very difficult for them to manage. So we get these grips. If you see, these are universal grips which can hold anything, whether a toothbrush or a pen or anything is like that. Otherwise, we get specific cutlery like all these with broader grip. The whole funda is it should be broader grips. If you see these chopsticks, they are already attached, so it's easy for them to use it. Then mug. If you see here, it's a double-sided mug because with one hand with tremors, it's not possible for them to drink. So if it's a two-hand mug, it's much more stabilized. So these are there. Then this is a key holder again with a bigger grip, a comb, a brush, a bigger pen. Similarly for clothes, because buttoning the shirt is a big problem with them. So what we usually tell them is to do Velcro shirts. So instead of buttons, they have these Velcros, which is easy for them in their daily activities. Even for pants, t-shirts, we can do it. And these for shoes also. So Velcro is a big thing here. Then rope ladder. This is when, patients really can't get up and they don't have support. You can use this rope ladder so that you can, with the help of the rope, you can get up. Some assistive bars in the house. Excuse me. Especially in your wash area and your bath area, where you need support to get up for near the shower or something, even near your bed when you're getting up. So wherever needed, it's good to get these assistive bars in your environment. Walking aids, this completely depends from case to case which walking aid is required, whether they need a roller, whether they need a wheelchair, uh, a walker, a stick. But these are different types of walking aids. A therapist will prescribe a walking aid according to your need, and you should use it if need is there. Okay, you should not say that walking aid nahi chahiye and all that. You have to use it if your balance is unstable. Okay, so remember to be sure to only choose activities that you feel safe doing. Okay, it's always wise to check with your physiotherapist. I keep repeating this, that this is not therapy, this is home exercise program. So always keep your therapist in loop. One thing I would like to mention here is that when to do these exercises. As I had mentioned in our earlier presentation also, that Parkinson's have an on and off period. Okay, so when you take these medications, after I think 20 minutes to 30 minutes, depends from patient to patient, the on period starts, which is usually on an average for 2 hours. So that is your on period. So you should always, always, always exercise in your on period. That's very important. Okay. Okay, now I would like to mention about PDMDS very quick, because I was very lucky to work with PDMDS, and PDMDS is a non-profit organization. It is Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorder Society. This is for all our patients out there. They have more than 50-60 centers all over India, and in Bombay itself, they have centers in almost every single area. So these what PDMDis basically does is they arrange group therapy sessions, which is usually once a week from different centers, for different centers. All the patients with Parkinson's come together, they do a group therapy, and they have a multidisciplinary approach. They have physical therapy sessions, they have art therapy, they have dance movement therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. I mean, you name it, and all the therapies are available in PDMDS. So, and it's also kind of social, because as I mentioned, the psychological part is also very equally important. They do also have psychologists who give you counseling. So that is also a plus point. So when these patients come together in a group of 50, 60, whatever, they do their exercises together, they feel, that they are meeting similar kind of people. They discuss their problems, they get solutions from each other, they get support from each other. And there are many events which are organized by PDMDS. There are marathons, there is a dance with Shamak Dawar. Then there was a recent program for Parkinson's patients where these ACE designers came in, and Parkinson's patient wore the designer clothes which was specially designed for patients with Parkinson's, and there was a ram show. Then there is an annual event on World Parkinson's Day, which is like an annual day for these patients, where these patients come together, sing, dance to yoga. They are associated with Iyengar Yoga Institute, which is very good. So there are a lot of things. You will get more information on their website. So please do visit them. Please get registered with them, because they will keep updating you the new updates coming up on Parkinson's disease. And it's all free of cost, because it's a non-profit organization. So yes, so you can just take these contacts, and you can definitely contact them. So yeah, the more active you are, the better you feel. That's the motto, I guess. And as I think, Nupur, we have already included all the questions in the presentation, because we didn't want to do a different session here. But if anyone still has any questions, these are our contact details. Nupur and I will be very happy to answer all your questions. You can put it down in the comment section also. So please feel free to ask any questions you have.
So Asmita, thank you so much. It was a very good session. It was not a gist, I'll not say it was a gist, it was a nice, detailed exercise program that you gave that the patients can do at home. And as Asmita mentioned, you can get in touch with us on the details that we have mentioned. And yeah, we will be carrying on with a lot of webinars. So
Yes.
keep yourself logged into our YouTube page, our Facebook pages. We'll keep you updated definitely. So thank you so much, Asmita, once again. It was a very nice session, and we will see you all soon. So stay home, stay safe, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Please stay home, stay safe, and we'll come with the next webinar very soon.